Finally, house rules are here in Gloomhaven Digital. If you watched my previous video about the changes that were coming to Gloomhaven Digital, the things that they were adding in some new Frosthaven rules, also changing the enhancement system a little bit, that patch has now gone live to everybody. So if you are on the core release today, your game should be updated and you should have access to these new options. If you've been playing in the open beta version of the game like I have for the last couple of weeks, we've been sort of testing them and they've been drip fed into that version as we've been playing with them, but they've now all of them have been added all at once to the core release of the game. Also included within this patch is the long awaited Steam achievement. So for all of you achievement hunters out there, they're now in the game. I've taken a look at them and there's some kind of straightforward ones that you would expect, the usual stuff of just completing the game and completing the campaign or doing well in Guildmaster, but also there is some quite interesting ones that do push you to try and do certain things in the game. So this is some really good stuff and I'm glad that they're finally here, and I'm certainly going to be doing some achievement chasing on my Wednesday streams for the next couple of weeks to try and get the max 50 achievements that are on offer here. So let's take a look about how you can start using these new house rules and the enhancement changes. So if you're starting a brand new campaign, you can choose your difficulty as you could before, but now you're going to have this option down here called ability enhancements. Now you're going to have to choose one of these two, and as default the updated is selected. However, whichever one of these two you choose, this will be permanent. This cannot be changed. You can always change your difficulty at a later point. We'll also get into the house rules, which can also be changed, toggled on and off at any point. However, this is permanent. So whichever you decide to go with, this is going to be for the remainder of your save. This is how it's going to work. Now, as standard, the updated enhancements is selected. If you are coming from the game for the very first time, so you have not played the tabletop version before, so you have no preference between either or, I would highly suggest that you play with the updated version. It makes a lot more sense. It means you can get enhancements a bit cheaper, a bit earlier. You don't have the the hookups, if you like, or the workarounds that had to be in place for the physical game. Some people will like to play the physical game rules because that's what they know and that's how they experience the original game. So I think it's nice that the devs have given us options for both. But if you are coming to this game for the very first time, you have no experience of the tabletop version, my personal preference and what I'm always going to be playing with from now on really is going to be the updated rules. Now, if you do change to the original, this means now that you have permanent enhancements, which means that if you retire a character and you decide to create that class again, you will have those enhancements from the first time that when you put them on the character. So that can be a nice way of, if you like to play one character for the majority of the campaigns. The only exception I would say is when you want to do that. So if you do want to play one character pretty much the entire way, and then when you retire, just start them again, start that class again, then this might be more beneficial for you. But if you are going to experience every element of the game, so you're planning on playing multiple different characters, you want to retire, you want to go on, then honestly, updated is probably the way to go. This also does give you the option to refund enhancements for up to 75% of the costs, which can be quite nice for experimenting too. You don't get burned too bad by maybe you put an enhancement on something and then in a couple of scenarios time you kind of realize, well, actually that wasn't very smart. That wasn't really what I wanted to do. Doesn't seem to be the best value or something like that. You can always sell it, get 75% of the value back, and you don't feel too bad. With original, they are permanent. You cannot sell them. What is done is done. And yeah, some people are still going to want to play like that because that is the original tabletop experience as it was released. If you are currently playing, so you have a save already going on, then your save is automatically going to be updated to the new enhancement cost system. So if you do have enhancements already on your characters, you'll notice that you can now sell those enhancements for 75% of that value back to the shop, whereas before it was 100%. So this is a little bit of a nerf, if you like, from what the previous one was, because you could sell them back for 100% for a period of time, but now it is 75%. However, you will also notice that the costs have been adjusted, so that now everything will be a little bit less. So if we go to buy here, you can see that it's only going to cost me 20 gold to add movement to the bottom of Massive Boulder. So this is nice. This is a good change, I think, in my opinion. I think this is a great change that I think most people are going to be happy with. But if you do have a current save, be aware that this is now what your new enhancement costs are going to be, and that cannot be changed. You cannot revert that back to the previous version, and you also cannot change that for the permanent enhancement ability. So that might be a little bit disappointing for some people who were maybe started playing and then were really holding out hope that they could have persistent enhancements. Unfortunately, you are going to have to start your save again, or if you would really like those. Now, once you are at the world map screen, before you go into a dungeon at all, even if you're on an existing save or a brand new save, you can now hit escape, go to the options menu here, and you can now pull up the house rules tab at the bottom here. And what this will do is this will give you the different house rules that are currently in the game that you can play with. Now, as default, all of these will be switched to original. So you will need to ensure that you go in and you enable these house rules. Once you have enabled them though, they will be on. Once you save, they will remember to be ticked on, so you won't need to do it every time, but it is worth making sure that you go in and check these house rules because they don't automatically get added, which I think is interesting because, to be honest, some of these I don't necessarily classify as house rules, but more of an evolution of the rule, because these are going to be the rules going forward with some of the future games. So Jaws of the Lion, for example, had the line of sight rule, and also, well, not quite the line of sight rule, but it's basically a very small variation of it. They've kind of worked around to make a similar rule, but essentially it's in the spirit of the Jaws of the Lion rules, and that will also be the rule in Frosthaven. And you've also got the advantage disadvantage, which is the new Frosthaven rule. So as you come in here, you can choose between these. Now, the only one that I would really recommend that players decide very carefully about whether or not they want to use is the attack modifier version. Personally, I always play original, and what this is that the ×2 and the miss are still in the game. So you still have the opportunity to draw ×2s, and you still have the opportunities to draw misses. However, if you change it to the variant, these will actually be changed to a +2 and a -2 instead. The reason for this is to reduce the variance that some people may find. Some people do not like it that they have this opportunity to miss, and they don't really like the opportunity to crit because perhaps the game becomes a little bit too RNG focused for them. I honestly feel like that's kind of a little bit of a moot point once you start using Strengthen, and there are tools at players' disposals to get better at this. You get Strengthen right, and then that will give you advantage on attacks, and then you don't really have to worry so much about some of these issues. But I can understand why some people may find the game frustrating, and it was an official variant in the board game, so it is nice to see that they've added an option. But for me, I am always going to keep this as original because I think it diminishes an element of the game, and I think it also diminishes blesses and curses to the point where I don't think that they're very interesting to play with. So I would much rather just have that opportunity to crit and miss in the game personally. However, all of the others I would strongly suggest that you turn on. Really, the only one you might not want to turn on is line of sight for certain reasons, but advantage and disadvantage, the original is that basically you could roll a rolling modifier into a miss, and because you have to add the rolling modifier to the miss, it would actually be a miss, because a miss plus anything is still a miss. So I would strongly suggest that you turn the variant on, which is the evolution of the rules. This is now the official Frosthaven rule. Makes a lot more sense, and it just means you don't have that opportunity to miss anymore when you're strengthened and you manage to roll into a miss, for example. It means that certain characters, for example, like the Scoundrel, can now easily go get those rolling modifiers without worrying about it. I think the Sun benefits from this quite a lot as well because of some of their cards and abilities. All in all, this is a net positive for every single character, and it makes rolling modifiers fun to play with and actually viable to go get without worrying about the underlying mathematics of should you or shouldn't you get them. So I recommend every player to just turn these on. Line of sight. So you've got the original line of sight rules is that you can only draw line of sight from the points, the corners of the hexes. The variant of line of sight is actually adds a little point into the middle of each hex. Now, this is to follow the kind of same sort of rules as Jaws of the Lion, which is in Jaws of the Lion, you could draw a line from any part of the hex to any other part of the target hex that you're trying to get line of sight of. There are sometimes some weird situations in Gloomhaven in which, because you are not allowed to draw line of sight from points of the hex that are bordering on a wall, there are some times when all of the points or many of the points are actually bordering onto a wall, and that means that you can't actually draw line of sight from that point. So there are certain times where it feels like you should have line of sight, but actually you don't, because the rule is a little bit awkward. It's kind of niche. It's something that maybe you won't come across much, but certainly if you're brand new to the game and you don't have any of the original tabletop rules experience, definitely turn this on, because then it will actually just make a lot more sense to you as a regular player without having to worry about the awkward board game rule for sure. Next up, you've got summons movement. So summons movement, the original is that if there is absolutely no focus, they will not move. So summons would end up quite often getting left in the first room that you summon them in, because if you were to stack up on a door, let's say you were to clear a room out, then you were to go towards a door, long rest, there may be multiple turns in which the summons just sit there and do nothing, because there's no enemies that they can see, so they just don't do anything. They just freeze. They've got nothing to do. Now, if you turn this variant on, if there is no focus, then there is a choice that they can move towards the actual summoner character, so the character who summoned that particular summon. They will move one hex towards them. This is a choice. You can do it if you want to or if you don't want to. This is important for some characters who may not want to do this, but it is a choice. You don't have to do it. Also, importantly, this does not change the rules for if there is an enemy, but they cannot move to them. So there will still be that in certain situations in which maybe doors are blocked because people are on it or enemies are on it. So your summon may be able to see an enemy, but they might not be able to move towards them because there's no amount of movement that could get them into range. So they still would do nothing. Importantly, this only applies when there is no focus whatsoever. So even if you were to block a door, that doesn't mean that the summons are going to start moving towards you. It's when there is literally no enemies on the board, then they will have this option to move. But I would really recommend people turn this on as well. It does benefit characters that rely very heavily on summons and makes it just a little bit less bad if you were to summon them in the first room and you feel less bad about them sort of lagging behind. They may still lag behind a little bit. You know, this isn't going to solve all of the problems, but it does help out a little bit. They have also just updated a few small things, which I'll mention here. They've updated the ping system now, so you need to hold control and click to ping a hex on the map when you're playing in a multiplayer game to try and indicate something. That's nice because it means that you won't just accidentally ping stuff, because sometimes I've done that before, but also means that you can now ping on your own turn without fear of accidentally clicking or doing other things as well. So that's a really nice change. They've also changed the world map screen and the scenario screen to display if there is a chest in a scenario. This will help for the battle goal, which is to loot a chest. So now you will know whether or not there is actually a chest in that scenario before selecting that battle goal. But also this will allow you to see at a snapshot whether or not you've even looted the chest in that scenario. So if you do want to, maybe you don't get it the first time, but then you want to go and replay a scenario because you want to try and complete everything, you want to try and get everything that's available to you, it will indicate clearly that you did not loot the chest in that scenario the first time, so you can go back, do it, maybe loot the chest and just finish it off nicely. They have also updated the personal quest screen now with a hide feature. So you can now click this button here to actually hide from other players the personal quest that you have. This just means now that other players will not be able to see it. You're still going to be able to see it, but it just means if you are trying to play in the spirit of the original game and you don't want people to be able to mouse over your character and be able to figure out what it is that you've got, you can now perfectly hide that quest from the other players. They have also updated the contribute gold screen. So now when you need to contribute gold or receive gold as a collective, as your entire party, you now get this screen, which will now clearly show you how much gold each individual character has, so that you can distribute gold however you like to make sure that if you want a certain character to pay for more because maybe they have lots of gold, and you can do that. Also, you can argue with your friends who deserves the gold, who should contribute more, because now you can see, well, actually, they're hoarding a lot of gold, so perhaps it should go to more fair sort of places. This update also brought a lot of just general bug fixes. I won't go through all of them, but they're all sort of known bugs, so good to see that they are still working away, fixing bugs at the same time. I think all of these changes are really good. I've been playing with them in the open beta for a while now, and I really like the new enhancement changes. I will have a video on enhancements coming very soon, probably within the next sort of few days, in which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail what I think this really does and what this changes and the options and things that this opens up for you as players. Also, make sure to check out my tools spreadsheet where I've got all of the updated costs in there. So if you want to reference everything, put a link down below for my tools spreadsheet. Go check that out. You can go and see how much everything costs and what the reductions really are compared to what the original costs are, because there is a considerable reduction there. So people will be surprised. So that might make you change your mind. I still think there's a few more house rules or changes to the rules I'd really like to see. For me, I would absolutely love to see the new push-pull rule put into this version of the game. How that works is that you can push or pull up to the amount of push or pull that you have, which I think makes a lot more sense to sort of general new players of the game too. If you didn't play the board game, you wouldn't maybe understand how push and pull works, because it doesn't really operate exactly how you think it would by just reading what it does. So at the moment, push and pull, you must use the maximum if possible, which in particular with pull makes it very awkward, because sometimes you pull enemies that have retaliate towards you, so then they do retaliate damage to you, or you pull them close to you, so then you become the focus and then they attack you instead. And that's not really what you want to do. You want to kind of keep them at arm's length and maybe pull them into something like an interesting AoE pattern as well. And so you don't want to pull them the full amount. So that's going to be really interesting. It's going to definitely make push and pull much better. I mean, push is already pretty good because you can usually use it to good effect to trigger traps, but it will certainly make both of those things better, in particular pull. So looking forward to that, and I hope that that might be something that they can do, and it shouldn't be too hard, but that will be the next house rule really on my wish list. So just a quick video for you today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Which house rules are you looking forward to playing with, and which house rules would you like to maybe see added that maybe you've played with in your own tabletop version? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll be really interested to see your thoughts, and perhaps maybe some of them might be picked up and added in the next wave, because I don't think that this is necessarily the end of these house rules being added in. I think maybe we might see some more. Hopefully we might see some more. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you do really enjoy the content. It helps me out so much here on growing on YouTube, and I do really appreciate everybody who does, who just watches, likes, subscribes. It just means the world to me. So thank you so much. Also, come over to twitch.tv/mandatoryquest, where I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday Gloomhaven. So if you want to come hang out, play Gloomhaven, ask me any questions live over there on Twitch. Okay, all that's left for me to say then is thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.
I think still, yeah.
Oh, that's the blessing from Jab.
Yeah.
That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?